I want to address the issue of hatred against institutions, specifically the institution of the police. There is a lot of hatred against cops, and this has become very, very ubiquitous, um, especially in our own situation concerning George Floyd and all these protests against police brutality. One thing that I have noticed over the years is that people who make a living off of complaining about the government all the time is that they always have something to complain about. Because in any country you live in, you are always going to have something to remonstrance. You are always going to have something to point out when you want to criticize the state. There's always going to be corrupt cops. There are always going to be people who overreach their power. There are always going to be people who are going to try to encroach on people's rights. This has been a constant phenomenon throughout human history. We're not going to create a perfect society. That's a given. I think we can all agree on that. But one thing that we can create is a good enough society. We can create a society that is comfortable enough for people. That's comfortable enough for people. The United States is, for the most part, comfortable enough. Even people who are classified as poor live relatively comfortable lives. Especially when you compare it to, I don't know, countries like Liberia, Brazil, in the favelas, Congo, Egypt. I would pick the life of someone who was categorized as poor in American standards over the life of a poor man in Liberia. Anytime. So we can create a society that is good enough, because perfection is, well, that can only be found in heaven. So this whole idea of destroying the police or outlawing the police or abolishing the police because of some instances of police brutality is just an utterly retarded idea. It is completely inept. Because let's say you get rid of the police. You're still going to have criminals. You're still going to have thieves. You're still going to have people who want to screw over their neighbors. What then? What do you do then? You are going to have an institution to deal with these problems. You are going to have a police force. So the idea of a police force is innate within human society. Even if you have something that's not called the police, but that's there to protect people, it still serves the same function. Let's say you have a village watch force. It still serves the same function of catching criminals, killing criminals when they need to be killed, defending the community. There was a saint, his name was Saint Gerard of Arliac. Saint Gerard of Arliac, and he was a French knight who was very efficient in the art of warfare and the sword. And he was a knight, and he was planning on being a warrior. He loved the idea of fighting. But then one day he got some sort of an injury. I think he got it while he was riding his horse. So he had to stay in bed for a long time. And while he was in bed, he spent time reading a lot of books. And he learned about spirituality. And this was in the, I want to say, in the 9th or 10th century. So, medieval period. And he decided that he was going to use his skills for good. So he started a movement of warriors, a group of warriors, to defend villages from pillagers, people who would pillage villages. This was in medieval France. And that's exactly what he did. He used his skills to defend the community. It wasn't a government force. It wasn't taxpayer funded. It was something that he did from his own will. But it really goes to show you that no matter what you do, even if you don't have a government police force, or if you do have one and they're not really reliable, you are going to have some sort of a defense organization to defend locals. It's just a natural part of human existence. Because of sin and the fall and all of our transgressions, there are a lot of people who have very, very violent desires. How do you defend the defenseless against such people, against such evil people? So you have to have some sort of a institution that polices society. It is completely retarded to think that it's a good idea to abolish the police. And then they argue and say, well, we'll create our own police force. You come from the same exact society as cops do. We all come from the American strata. So if you're going to have problems with the cops now, what makes you think you're not going to have problems with your own police force? Plus, another thing that I want to say is, when I say that we all come from the American strata, I'm not saying that we all have the same moral principles, because that's just not true. Police officers, for the most part, are good people. Police officers, for the most part, are good people who have good principle. The people who hate cops, the people who say let's abolish the police, these people have very questionable principles. And if you look at a lot of the music that's coming out against cops, look at the people making this music. These people look like demons. They look like monsters. Which really goes to show that if these people get their way, it would be a complete nightmare. Anyway, hope you guys have learned something from this message. You guys just heard some theology. God bless.